Morning, everybody, and yeah, spring equinox. It's getting lighter, and which is absolutely fantastic. And someone here to make our day lighter and brighter is Craig from Forge Genetics. Craig, you've got a very interesting story. Tell us about your business.
Well, great. I love that introduction. I've never been accused of making anyone a day lighter before, so yeah. Yeah, Forge Genetics is a spin-out from the University of Nottingham, which was created because of an invention that was made here at the university. And it was obvious that the next step for that technology was the huge commercial appeal it has. Um,
That's really interesting. So huge commercial. There's so many that get spun out of universities. So how did it actually begin in terms of the research that you did?
So the research group it came from is the Synthetic Biology Research Centre at Nottingham, headed by Professor Nigel Minton here. And they specialize in working on lots of weird and exotic but industrially relevant bacteria, basically. So where industrially a process uses a bacteria as a catalyst, companies were using those bacteria, but often you want to make those bacteria better in some way. And normally the way is to do genetic engineering on that for those bacteria. But because they're so weird and they only grow in very specific environments, not many places in the world can actually work on them because of the facilities, and not many people in the world know how to do genetic engineering of these bugs. So the Synthetic Biology Research Centre at Nottingham was one of the few places that could do it. And it meant that a lot of industrial clients were coming to the research centre saying, can you do this bit of work for us because we don't have the competencies in-house? But the key thing that they were saying over and over again was that there's basically a standard way of changing microbes and all things in biology now, and it's a technique called CRISPR. It's a way of editing DNA essentially, and the problem with that from the industrial point of view was that it's very expensive to license CRISPR, and it often meant that they would have to pay like a 5% surcharge on all their sale of the products made with it if they use that technique at any point. So industry companies will come to the research group and say, can you do this genetic engineering work? But please, if you can avoid using CRISPR, it would make a huge difference to us. So the push became to invent something that was like CRISPR, had all the same capabilities as CRISPR, but isn't CRISPR. And Chris Humphreys, who was a postdoctoral researcher at the time, set his mind to that challenge and came up with something that works really, really well. And that's the base of the spin out. It's a technique called forge editing. Has been demonstrated in bacteria so far, and we're increasing the range of biology which it can work in, so we can increase the market that we can play in, basically.
I mean, there's several things because lots of people will listen to this and go, like I'm thinking at the moment, is wow. That's the first thing. The second thing is what there's two questions that come to mind there. Is everybody thinks of bacteria as bad,
Mm.
yeah, infection.
Mhm.
So this is good bacteria. So what do you mean by good bacteria?
Yeah, that's the first thing I have to address. That's that point. Um, I've learned this lesson repeatedly when I talk to people who aren't in it, that I need to introduce that first. So the fact is that bacteria are used in many industrial processes already. Um, but- so the most important one would be making amino acids, which are used in animal feed and also human food as well. That's a huge market for amino acids. You can make some of them chemically, but you can't make all of them chemically, and you need to use bacteria to make those. So amino acids are what makes up protein. So they're an absolutely fundamental part of food.
That's amazing. So go on for a moment. So amino acids and into the food, into our food that we eat,
Yeah.
etc., etc. So the whole market of the food industry then and the food supply chain we're talking about here.
Yeah, food and feed. So it's especially important in animal feed where you want to make their diet exactly what they need. But bacteria are used in a bunch of different stuff. So biofuels, making ethanol, making various chemicals, dyes, pharmaceutical products. So that a lot of drugs are just made using bacteria directly. Maybe the most obvious one, actually. There's a huge amount of products that we use on a day-to-day basis that are made using bacteria and can only be made using bacteria, that you just wouldn't think about.
But this is certainly a Pandora's box to me, actually, now, Craig. So so we've got all this stuff, and obviously based in Nottingham, the
Mm,
labs in Nottingham. So in terms of the process, how do you actually scale up from, you've got product,
mm.
you can do um, the things you want to do with this particular this bacteria. How do you actually scale up?
Well, yeah, it's very specific depending on what you're actually making. But a typical process just looks like you have a 5 liter bioreactor in the lab, show everything's behaving as it should. Then you build like a 500 liter bioreactor. And a bioreactor is just a big steel tank, basically, where you're putting in acids and bases to keep the pH the right level, and you're temperature controlling it to make the conditions perfect for the bacteria to live happily and make the product you want them to make. And then you'll add some downstream processing elements to it. So if it's ethanol, you add the normal fractional distillation, or sorry, just the distillation columns. Um, Amino acids, different purification columns, things like that. It's a whole other thing. But that's the engineering component of it that I've left behind me now, and I'm focused purely on the genetics. So all about the lab scale stuff.
That's amazing. How do you actually transport it then from from the tank to wherever you want to do? Do you stick it in? Is it liquid? Is it pill? Is it what is it?
So a typical way that might go down would be there would be a big company who had a huge 1,000 liter, thousands of liters, tens of thousands of liter bioreactor. So like a big industrial thing where the bacteria can live happily, and they have a they have a bacteria that works, is making enough products, but they say, this company Forge Genetics have got something. They can make it better in some way. So they'll send us a sample of it, a tiny sample in a tube this big that's like frozen. It's in dry ice. So just to preserve it, they'll send that in the post. We'll open it up in the lab, grow it up into some bigger things, edit its DNA, check it's all correct. It's not going to be dangerous or anything like that. And then we'll make a small sample again, freeze it, send it back over in the post. And then they can do the big scale things.
That's amazing. And then go from there. So there's lots of mad scientists in Nottingham. I think is probably the best way. There's not mad scientists, but absolutely hugely talented um, people working on this sort of thing, which we don't know about, which is absolutely fascinating. So in 2 or 3 years' time, where do you think you'll take the business to? I mean, this is obviously it's a new business, isn't it?
Mm. Yeah, so at the moment we have a very clear, unique selling point in that we all have really good backgrounds in a specific kind of bacteria called Clostridia. And that's where our core bread and butter is. That I think we are world class for that, unarguably. So at the moment we're just hammering every company that's using this type of bacteria, this Clostridia, and we're saying, outsource some of your R&D to us, because that's what we're good at. But we want to spread out into different bacteria because why not? It's basically the same thing. And then we want to try out our technique as well in plants and in algae and in yeasts. And then ultimately, we think the biggest impact is going to be into the relatively new field of gene therapy. So that's modifying human cells and fixing genetic diseases with that, basically.
Right. Okay. This is absolutely fascinating. I mean, sort of, and so the purpose of Forge Genetics is to do the R&D to create the bacteria that people can then use on an industrial scale.
Yeah, initially. But the thing we're really trying to push is that the technique that we have is universal across biology. And and mentioned CRISPR earlier, it's really a competitor to CRISPR. And although that was developed in bacteria, very, very quickly people went, we don't care about bacteria really. This needs to be editing human cells, and because there's a huge number of human diseases that are impossible to solve unless you can reliably modify the DNA of human cells. And CRISPR was the first really convenient way to do that, let's say. But there are some problems with it. And our ultimate ambition is to show that forge editing can actually fix those problems and yeah, and make a
Well,
meaningful difference in medicine.
wow. And what type of things can this be used for? I mean, what diseases or stuff like that?
So the first gene therapy made with CRISPR that got approved in the UK was last November, so November 2023. It was called Casgevy, and it is a therapy that can fix beta thalassemia, which is a blood disorder, a nasty blood disorder, and also sickle cell anemia. So there's a problem with people's blood basically, and you can the process works by they would take out a sample of blood, find the specific blood cells that they want to modify in such a way that it will fix the disease. So it will allow people to transport oxygen around much better, expand out those blood cells, and then reinfuse them into the patient. And it's great because it should be like a single treatment type deal. At the moment, the treatments are very much like ongoing. You have to continuously take blood transfusions and a lot of complicated things. So that's the first thing that's hit the UK market. There's that kind of thing, but the number of different things is crazy, and the most exciting thing maybe is that this is the we can really have a good stab at dealing with diseases that have essentially no cure, and there's no real prospect of having a cure, like neurological degenerative diseases like Alzheimer's. That's
Wow.
where I really want to be.
And this is all in Nottingham. So just remind me what CRISPR is.
The CRISPR is just the way of modifying DNA.
Right.
It's a technique. Yeah. Think of it as a tool.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as a business, you mentioned you're going out to the big corporates, whatever. So how do you think you're actually going to grow the business like that? Is it just getting out there and talking about it, or how as a community? Because this is a community of business here. So how as a community can we help Forge Genetics?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think of this in terms of active and passive strategies. The active strategy is us emailing people that we know would be interested or might be interested in this, making direct specific reach outs to them. And that's gone well so far. But I really want to get into the passive uh, client acquisition, which is just having a big enough online presence and presence in the scientific and industrial community that people start coming to us. And so that's why we're trying to build out an online presence and go to conferences. And actually, I do think that publishing in scientific literature is going to be key as well.
Absolutely. So how long has the business been going?
So we were technically formed in July last year, but we only really started going in October last year when we spun out of the university officially and got a exclusive license to use Forge editing.
That's so it's an exclusive license, it's patented,
Yes.
it's
Yeah,
everything
that's
like
right.
that.
Yeah.
Absolutely fantastic. So, and as a business, are you looking for investment or?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because we're profitable as we are just based on selling these outsourced R&D services. But if we want to go for the really high impact stuff, the medicine type things I was talking about, we just have to get investment to fund the R&D that we want to do to get the technique up to the point that it can be a real competitor. So we are seeking investment for that side of things while always wanting to. So in all our accounting, we're like, this is internal R&D, this is contract work. And I want to make sure that we're always profitable for the contract work kind of stuff, while also pursuing the golden ticket and the impactful investor type stuff.
Absolutely brilliant. So, what do you see as your main challenges going forward?
Why do I not have an answer to that immediately? I think I'm a scientist by background, so I always immediately go to the technical challenges. Uh, so probably, I'm not sure. What is the main challenge we have going forward? I don't know. I think probably just the fact that we have this target of being like CRISPR but safer and better. But so do a lot of other people. It's a known problem. And the race to make a better CRISPR has basically been going for about 10 years now. And multi-billion dollar valuation companies have been formed on the basis that we're like CRISPR, but better. So there's intense white hot competition here. Uh, and I guess the biggest fear that I have is that we get something that works, and then a couple of months later, someone else gets something that works a little bit better, and then who would be interested in us anymore? I guess that's the main challenge. So I think speed. I think we just need to get there first.
So it's a bit like a bacteria arms race, isn't it? But based on brains, which is absolutely fantastic. So, well, it sounds it's absolutely fantastic and absolutely fascinating. And what we've done so far is absolutely brilliant. I mean, did you always want to have your own business?
I remember my PE teacher in school was asking what I was going to do with my life when I was like 18. And I kind of tongue in cheek said, yeah, I'm probably going to study biology, form a biotech company, and then sell it and retire when I'm like 30. I'm 32 now, so I failed that. But it's not going terribly.
So I think the answer is yes.
Yeah.
That's been a fascinating insight, Craig, to your business, and I think more just as important, not only for genetics, is to make our business community aware of what value the science and the universities bring to our country. And you mentioned that you're world class.
Yeah, for one specific area.
Well, that's fine, but if there's lots of people in one specific area who are world class, then you've got lots of world class, then haven't you?
Yeah.
So, a world class for genetics doing something which is quite frankly mind-bogglingly brilliant. So great. Thanks very much for your time. Anything else you'd like to add?
Just to your point about the universities and the importance of that to the economy, it's massive. The whole greatness of countries is always built around what technology they have and where they are in their technological development compared to other countries. I don't think it's anything about like conquering other places or spirit. I think it's purely what technologies you have. And if the UK is going to do one thing really well, it should be getting the regulation, the investment, the ecosystem, the ethos right for continuously testing the limits of what can be done technologically. And in biology, I think this could be the real century of biology. I think it's going to be huge, especially in medicine and with gene therapy, especially now.
Brilliant. Craig, thanks very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.